So what happens when music becomes important to evangelicals? Well, you get charismatic evangelicalism. And I think it's important to look at this from experience rather than just maybe the theology. And also, I hope that this isn't too macho. I just fancied doing something in the garage. And I don't have tattoos like the Hillsong Boys. So, yeah, I think it's really important. So charismatic generally means looking, the Holy Spirit and that being an important aspect of what the church is. But it's not been my experience at all. Charismatic essentially means evangelical theology and music's important. So, and how we feel. So there needs to be some sort of worship band. And apparently that side of, or that kind of style of church is what's growing in Britain at the moment. So again, I'm still interested in it, and I'm not just wanting to sling rubbish. My background is, grew up in a Christian home. I studied theology. I played music in bands in those sort of churches, in festivals as well. I've preached a bit, and I saw huge value in it, and now I'm, like a lot of us are sort of thinking, how useful is this? So I thought I'd quickly tell a bit of a story as to how I sort of see this, and just be able to kind of separate it a bit. So if you're as old as me, you probably know the band Sigur Rós. You can look them up, they're pretty cool. I think they're from Iceland. I've been to see them a couple of times, and I compare worship music, or the experience of it, very much to one of those gigs. And it's not about the style, but it's about what it can do to you, also do to you whilst you're in a group of people listening to this music. Now, what it does very well is you can leave the hustle, the bustle of the city, in my case London, and you go into the venue, you get your beer or your whiskey or whatever, and you go and sit down, and there's people elbowing you, or you're standing up. I think I've seen them both sat down and stood up. People elbowing you a bit, and then the band will start, and everything changes as the first kind of notes are played or the first beat is made. Everything changes slightly. And what's interesting, everyone's like, okay, we're in agreement, we're here for this music. And what's really fascinating is that's exactly the same as church. You kind of arrive in your car, and I don't know, the church I used to go to most recently was in Croydon, and if any of you have driven in Croydon, it's probably the worst place in Britain. So if you're not very good at riding a bike, I've also been half beaten up there cycling. If you're not very good at driving or confident, just avoid Croydon. And it's with my motorbikes, it's always a place I'm like, God, please keep me safe. Anyway, I'd drive through Croydon on the way to this church and get there, and I'd just be like, oh, that was such a horrible experience going through Purley Way and all of that sort of stuff, just horrible. And but when you get to church and the music starts, you're like, okay, I know why I'm here. Now, charismatic evangelical church is all about that. It's, you set the tone with that initial song. Usually it's quite an upbeat kind of, you all sing together, and it's like that is the happy clappy bit, I suppose. And Sigur Rós, whether they do that or it's kind of like a clear mark, this is starting. And then in the service, essentially what you do, and I remember there are all sorts of worship conferences, which basically means people who play music in churches go to these conferences to, I don't know, buy more CDs and books. But we always used to talk about the worship curve, which, I mean, even that being a thing is so depressing. And I remember Matt Redman teaching us at Soul Survivor. I'm pretty sure he taught us the worship curve. So now we're talking 1998, 1999, so it's been a while. And essentially you start, and everyone's there, and you need to get them to a point or a peak where you then tail off ready for the talk. And that's essentially how a service works. And Sigur Rós does the same. You kind of draws you in, you all kind of go all chill. And all of you get relaxed and think, okay, I'm ready. Now, what church does is use that very same technique to then gather everyone together in this sort of group mood, to then for you to be very attentive for a talk. So you've just gone through this entire process, being built up, you're around with everyone, you're singing as well, which is different to Sigur Rós. You're singing as well, you're all in agreement, and then you're like, wow, I'm receptive for a talk. Mike Pilavachi used that incredibly well. In some respects, that's, I think, how he built his position and his power, was based on that band, Matt Redman's band. From my experience, I didn't really see the latter guys, but Matt Redman and the team, and I know some of them, they would build this incredible platform of mood or atmosphere or charismatic, ready for Pilavachi to then speak to the 3,000 young people and kids of us, when we're in Shepton Mallet, or when I used to go to the monthly celebrations in Watford. And he would then speak, and we were ready to hear stuff, because we were like all away, ready to hear. He would speak, and then and then the music would be starting again. We'd already kind of gone through this process of elation to meditation. And then he would say, the reflective time to be prayed for, where I've said before in other videos, we would then say, I need prayer for this. We didn't all need it, but we were always thinking, I need to really look internally, and I need support for this, and I need God to look at this. We were incredibly open, incredibly vulnerable, that then we would be prayed for. And this sense that God would move because we were so receptive, and I'm sure, and he often did, but we were just so ready. We'd been meditating in a corporate way for like an hour and a half, and then that music would start again. And interestingly, at festivals, and there was one incredible moment for me where I remember going to the front in Shepton Mallet, and for me it was a really significant time. I think I must have been 17. I was singing. Matt Redman was like up on the stage, and that mattered to me quite a lot when I was 17. And I remember singing, and all of a sudden my voice changed from being sort of halfway back to projecting, and then my voice changed. And I remember thereafter I could lead worship, I could sing to a microphone with quite a different voice, and something happened there. I don't know, unlocked, leveled up, and that was a really significant time. And I still, even now, and I don't know if it's just because it's cold in my garage, but I've kind of got goose pimples. That's an aspect of the charismatic evangelical church that really brought me into wanting to then do a gap year, and then wanting to, with Soul Survivor, and then study theology rather than going to television and youth work. Moved to America for a bit to try and plant a church, to then be a youth minister again in Surrey, and then in London, and then get fired because I didn't fit. But all of those things were kind of from this charismatic evangelical church. And there's, for me, and I'd love to hear what you think, for me the key difference is evangelicalism is all about the Bible, and I grew up in that. Boys Brigade, I won the national Bible competition when I was 11 with another 3 boys. The Bible, I knew the Bible inside out by the time I was 12, literally inside out. And then music, I brought those two things together, and for me, church was that, charismatic evangelicalism. The Bible was utterly important, music was that thing. I gathered together with everyone where we all agreed, we sang together, we knew the Bible, we had our Bible with us, and then we prayed for each other. And that was this kind of rhythm of the week, and then for the Soul Survivor aspect, rhythm of the year. I haven't seen any change since I was 15. Nothing's changed at all. I've said this stuff before, but when we look at this, evangelical charismatic, it is about the music. And I'm just wondering at the moment how valuable that is. It just doesn't seem very replicable. I watched a recent casting of the Soul Survivor Festival. Soul Survivor Church. And they had this extraordinary band up there, and the perspex in front of the drummer, and the production value was brilliant. And the camera, I don't know whether it changes or it's just one shot, but it looked pretty empty. The band was so significant, and it was like, I remember playing gigs, especially in America, where the band I was in, we used to play like in small venues and stuff, and we were brilliant. We were good. The drummer, especially Christian, was extraordinary. But we'd play in these dive bars, and there would be like 2 people not really paying attention, and yet we were like giving everything. And I'm just wondering, what is it around church at the moment that needs that? And we used to talk about this again when I was 15 in Essex, in the church I was part of, and we'd say, how important is it? And sometimes we'd just have a guitar and get rid of the band, or just have a piano and there wouldn't be anyone at the front, or we'd try to say it shouldn't be in the middle, it needs to be to the side. All these things, and I'm sure you're doing that now if you're still in church, it demonstrates this isn't quite right. So for me, that the whole environment is set up for this I don't know. We just need to talk about this. I think to really examine it. But for me, when I had someone contact me this morning, and she's looking at safeguarding and the charismatic music, and it's quite a clear. There's quite a clear sort of line to be drawn there, or a joining of the dots. It's people are made incredibly vulnerable, even in the service. That's normalised, and you're conditioned. That's another word I've used with someone lately. I think church conditions you to be vulnerable. Church conditions you to be open, and the very structure isn't about creating agency or independence. It's about creating dependence, not only on the monthly, the weekly, monthly, sometimes mid-meeting, midweek meeting, or yearly activity. It's also, it just burns into you this, I need that in order to experience this. I've been meeting with a monk regularly because they don't have any of that. They meet, there's 3 of them, they go through their sort of offices of prayer, and they don't have a big band, and yet they are meditating permanently in that respect. Or they're not, and it's just their life. I'm still trying to figure that out. But we don't need all of that. We don't need the worship leader that you probably, when I mentioned his name, you probably thought, oh yeah, Matt Redman. We don't need those guys. You don't need to buy that CD. You don't need to buy that book. You don't need to attend that festival. It's interesting to figure out, okay, well then how does church fit with all those questions? But I'm kind of, anyway, I don't need to put my judgment into it. I was just telling a bit of a story. Please like and subscribe. I'm sorry this is a ramble, but I hope you like my motorbikes. See ya.